What's up, everybody? Welcome to a 15-minute delayed version of Grinders Live brought to you by DraftKings. I am STL Cardinals 84 and joined today by Stevie filling in for CSU Ram, who must be out searching for Troy Tulowitzki's autograph. So thanks, Stevie, for filling in. And we've had some issues with Skype today, so we're having to do this old school. But it's good to be on with you for the first time, albeit on short notice.
Yeah, it's good to join you, and excited to do our first show together. And hopefully, the 15-minute delay is not going to affect us too much, and help everybody out and give them some awesome picks.
Yeah, and I don't think it'll be that big of a deal to cram it all into 45 minutes today, mainly because there's not many options at pitcher, and there's some big bats to go around. So, let's we can probably get right to the picks here, and we can start at pitcher. And it's kind of one of those nights where, despite my rambling about Strasburg earlier in the year, he's been pitching much better of late, and he's the only ace on the board tonight. Brings in an interesting strategy element for tournament games for sure. But cash games, boy, it's hard to pick anybody else because there's nobody else that's really consistently good on the mound tonight. So Strasburg is obviously the number one guy. But let's talk a little bit about how you would handle him kind of in a tournament setting. Is he going to be so highly owned tonight that it's possibly worth the fade, or is it just too risky?
I'm with you on cash games. I don't think there's a way that you can not play him tonight, but tournament, I think. It brings up some options where you can go against him, like maybe a Vogel song if you're thinking Washington's not going to score enough to get him the win, you can maybe go there. You could take two cheap guys. There's a couple cheap guys, that might be good for tournaments tonight. I'm pulling up DraftKings salaries right now, so give me 1 second here. But I'm looking. I know I like Charlie Morton tonight. I think he's in a good spot. If you're not wanting Strasburg, maybe you could go like Morton, Cingrani, combo for tournaments. But I think for cash games, I don't think there's a way that you can fade Steven Strasburg tonight.
Yeah, it'd take a lot of stones to fade him in a cash game, especially some of those Survivor tournaments that are going on right now. I'm willing to do it in a GPP tonight. I think he's going to be at that ownership level where if you fade him and he doesn't bomb often, and he probably won't tonight, but if he doesn't put up a stellar start for his huge price tag across the industry, you might have a leg up. I wouldn't recommend doing that if I was only rolling out a couple lineups or something like that, but it certainly brings in an element of strategy when a guy is going to be so highly owned. It's pretty much no secret tonight that he is going to be highly owned. But as far as the secondary picks, I agree with you on Morton. I like him quite a bit, especially at his price. 7,900, I believe, on DraftKings. He's 5,700 on FanDuel. So Morton, a good low-cost play against the Cubs, who struggle against right-handed pitching. He could be a nice alternative, especially in a tournament format. He's actually the only other pitcher I am rolling out in any form of cash game tonight to go along with Strasburg. That would be Morton. You can make an argument for some other guys, though, although they're not very strong ones. Don't mind R.A. Dickey, but the total in that game is kind of high, and they'll probably have the roof open tonight in Toronto, which there's some debate whether or not that affects him, but it's not windy there today, and it does tend to not move the knuckleball as much when it's not as windy. So I don't know if I'm on him a whole lot. Minnesota's been waking up with the bats a little bit lately, but he'll be a fairly popular option, I would guess. And don't mind Vogelsong, but mainly on a site like FanDuel, where he's significantly cheaper. On DraftKings, he's one of the highest priced options on the board. So Vogelsong, I'm a little lighter on him than FanDuel, or on DraftKings than I am on FanDuel. What about some of these other guys? You really have to dig deep if you want. Let's say you're on like a 3 starting pitcher site like Draft Street, or you're looking for a second starting pitcher on DraftKings to pair with Strasburg, and you already have enough exposure to Morton, or you don't want to take him. Any merit to a guy like Cingrani, who can get a high strikeout game every now and again, or a guy like Heron or Colementor? I mean, these are names I've heard throughout the day. Hard to distinguish one of those mediocre pitchers from the other, but is there any of those guys that would catch your eye at all?
I think Sangrani's in a decent spot tonight. I think he's in a good spot for a win tonight. I'm not much of a fan of Heron. He struggles against righties, and even though the lefty lineup for Cincinnati is more power oriented, I think Heron maybe for a tournament, not any close for cash. I'm with you on Charlie Morton as my second cash game guy with Strasburg. But I'm looking at, tournaments. I'm looking to kind of go against the grain, maybe with like a Jesse Chavez. I think he might be in a decent spot against a lineup that is very good, but I don't think he's going to be highly owned. And on a night like tonight, I think if you get a guy that's not going to be highly owned and he has a good game, I think he'll be way in front of everybody else. Besides that, maybe Dickey as a SP3, just because I think he's in a good spot for a win. I don't think he's going to have a stellar game in any sense. But I don't think anybody besides Strasburg has a lot of upside tonight, so I don't mind like going at maybe like a Colementor or somebody like you mentioned, just to save money to load up on all the bats that we have tonight.
Yeah, there's a lot of bats out there tonight, and that's what I think makes it a lot more interesting. If you want to potentially fade Steven Strasburg, because you can go cheap on your pitching, say take a Colementor and a Morton on a site like DraftKings, and that'll free up a lot of salary for you to get basically all the bats you want. But it's an interesting night. I'll be interested to see. I think the top 3 owned guys will clearly be Strasburg, and then Morton second, and then probably Dickey or Vogelsong third. Depending on the site and what the format is. So if it's a single pitcher or multi-pitcher site, but certainly all those secondary guys come with risk tonight. Even Strasburg, not the easiest of matchups against the Giants on the road, the team that's been playing the best of anyone in baseball. So that's not an easy matchup by any means, although that is a pitcher's park. With that, let's move on to some of those bats. We'll start with catcher. I think a popular option tonight will be Montero, a decent matchup against the righty Cosart, but he is the most expensive catcher on DraftKings. Evan Gattis is another guy that I think a lot of people will look to playing in Coors Field with his home run potential. I'd say for his price, Gattis is probably my favorite option, followed by Montero. And then you have a lot of backup catchers playing tonight. A lot of guys like Willen Rosario, Salvador Perez getting the nights off. So there's not a ton of top-end options at catcher. It's pretty much either one of the top guys or a value guy. I think Gattis is the guy I'm leaning towards the most. What are you thinking about catcher today?
Yeah, I like Gattis for tournaments. I think I'm going to roll out John Jaso for my cash game tonight. His price at $3,600 is really good on DraftKings tonight, so I like him a lot. But yeah, Gattis is my top option for tournaments, and followed by Montero as my number 2 option. I was kind of sad that Mesoraco wasn't in the lineup for the Reds because I think he was actually in a good spot also. But yeah, I'm gonna go Jaso with my cash games, and I'm looking Montero, Gattis as my tournament guys, and then maybe I like Navarro, but he's out of the lineup. So the cheap guys, maybe Josh Stoll for Toronto if I'm gonna go really cheap, the righty-lefty matchup in a hitter's park. But besides those 4 guys, I'm not really liking catcher tonight.
Yeah, a good point on Mesoraco being out. Again, also Willen Rosario out, Salvador Perez out, and I was very disappointed to see Salvador Perez out of the Royals lineup. He makes a living crushing left-handed pitching, and Vidal Nuno, one of the worst left-handed pitchers in the league. So it was disappointing to see no Perez in there for Kansas City tonight. Although the weather is an issue there, we should mention that. Monitor the weather if you're going to take anybody from that Kansas City New York Yankees game, especially if you're going to use a guy like Jason Vargas. It doesn't look that great there right now. I think that's the only game with the weather concern tonight. But I don't have a whole lot of exposure to that game right now. Jaso, I'm on board with him. Garrett Richards has been shelled by the A's in his 2 starts against them this year. Didn't make it out of the first inning in the last start. But he's been so hit or miss. I mean, Richards has been dominant his last 2 outings, and he could be a super contrarian GPP play tonight, that being Garrett Richards. Just throwing that out there. He could also get shelled by the A's for a 3rd time like everybody else does. I wouldn't recommend that other than if you're wanting to be super, super contrarian in a GPP. But yeah, other than that, I mean, there's just not a whole lot. I'm just trying to scroll through the player list here. Nothing grabbing me. Obviously, not going to use Buster Posey against Strasburg. Wilson Ramos might be a decent option if you're not on Vogelsong. I don't know if their lineup's out yet, but he's super cheap. And on FanDuel, where Victor Martinez is catcher eligible, we usually throw in a discussion about him at first base, but I think he's a great play tonight against Hector Noesi, who is not very good. So I'm assuming you like VMart as well.
Yeah, Victor Martinez is on the top of my list for sure tonight. More as a first base play because we're talking DraftKings, but yeah, I'm with you. I love him on FanDuel at catcher tonight.
Yeah, that's a bonus, him being still available there, and not at a super exorbitant price tag. So if we move into discussing him along with first base, kind of surprised to see Miguel Cabrera in there tonight. Brad Awesome said this morning that he was still having some cramping in his hamstring. I figured they'd just let him sit, but they do have Miguel Cabrera in there as the DH tonight. Fair warning, though, you could see him get pinch run for late in the game or taken out if that game gets out of hand. I'm surprised to see him playing at all. So if we're specifically talking about DraftKings at first base, where Miguel Cabrera is 5,800 and Victor Martinez is 4,500, I think Martinez is the safer play tonight. Plus, he gets a boost hitting from the left side against Noesi, who is terrible against left-handed bats.
Terrible against lefties and righties.
Yeah, he's pretty much just terrible all around.
Yeah, but I'm with you on Miggy. I don't know how you're going to really approach it, but me tonight, I'm 100% fading him just because he did leave last night's game, and if you watch that game at all, he was limping pretty good.
Yeah.
There's no way that I'm going to be playing him tonight at his 5,800 price tag, and even across the industry, I think his price is too much for me. But yeah, I'm with you on Victor Martinez. I like him a lot tonight. He's actually my number 2 guy at first base. My number 1 guy tonight at first base is Adam Lynn. He's absolutely crushing right-handed pitching this season, and he's in a great spot with the hitter's ballpark. Nolasco is one of the worst pitchers pitching today, and I'm all over Adam Lynn tonight.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how highly owned the Blue Jays guys are tonight. You hear everybody talking about the game in Coors Field, Atlanta, Colorado, possibly the game down in Texas, where for a rare night, the Blue Jays bats might fly under the radar. Simply because there's so many good hitting teams out there tonight facing poor pitchers. It'd be interesting to see where the ownership falls on all these guys. Obviously, I think people will naturally gear themselves towards the Coors Field game, but I think the Toronto bats could be pretty sneaky as well. So I think Lynn's a good pick. I recommended him the other night against Lance Lynn, who struggles against left-handed bats, and he did not disappoint. I believe that was Friday night. Had 2 or 3 hits. So I think he's solid. I think Goldschmidt might be a decent play as well, but his price is pretty high on DraftKings. Freddie Freeman, another guy I think a lot of people will be on tonight. I'm pretty high on him. Where do you stand on Freeman this evening?
Yeah, I like Freeman. You got an unproven pitcher that they're calling up from Double-A to kind of just fill in tonight because Lyles got hurt. So I think all the Braves are in play. But if I'm looking tournaments tonight, I'm going to look to maybe kind of avoid that game a little bit. Not because I don't think it's going to be a high-scoring game, but if it misses, I'm going to be on the other end of it where I'm going to be playing guys like Lind and Brandon Moss. But I do like Freeman. I like his price at 4,700 on DraftKings, but I have him in some of my lineups tonight, but I'm more of 70% against playing the Braves and Colorado guys tonight. But I do think it's going to be a higher scoring game. I'm kind of going against the grain with my lineups tonight.
Yeah, I've done that quite a bit. I always talk about not wanting to take the most popular stack out there. Some nights I'll elect to fade the Coors Field games, and some nights I won't. Just kind of depends on how I'm feeling. I'm kind of rolling the contrarian with the Strasburg fade on a lot of my tournament teams tonight. On the teams that I'm still choosing to pick. The Braves or Rockies players to differentiate myself a little bit. But I think that's a lot of different ways you can go. And a lot of people talking about the young slugger for the Rockies, the Astros, John Singleton, 3,500 on DraftKings. He has been raking since they called him up. I am just impressed with the way that Houston seems to be headed. With the ground ball pitchers that they're developing, guys like Dallas Keuchel, and then these big bats that they're bringing up from the minors, George Springer, and John Singleton. It's pretty amazing to see, and to be able to say that in a couple of years, it sounds like the Astros are going to be pretty darn good.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that team's going to be really good. I don't even know if it's going to take maybe another year or so with Singleton, and then they got I can't think of the outfitter's name to save my life right now.
Springer?
Yeah, Springer. He just totally slipped my mind. But with Springer, they got two young guys, and like you said, those pitchers, man, they're becoming a pretty good team. And I give them another maybe year and a half, and that team's going to be solid.
Yeah, the way they're developing that pitching is eye-opening. Focusing on occasionally pitching to contact, getting the ground balls, and it's paying off for him so far. I mean, Keuchel had that brilliant 4 or 5 game stretch there. I don't think he's going to be a Cy Young type guy going forward, but definitely has a solid future as maybe a high-end number 2 starter. So yeah, look out for the Astros. Kind of glad they're out of the NL Central these days after being the doormat to pick on for a few years. Sounds like those draft picks that they stockpiled in the early to late 2000s are going to start to pay off. So let's move to second base. Relatively thin position tonight compared to some of the others, and it's a position where it kind of depends on the site that you're playing on. I think DraftKings has the pricing nailed pretty well. FanDuel, a couple slip-ups there, and in general, not considering his price, I still like Jason Kipnis a lot. Even on DraftKings, where he's 4,300, at 2,700 on FanDuel, I think he's an absolute steal. But going against a struggling right-hander in Nick Martinez, getting the park bump, playing in Arlington, Jason Kipnis, especially on FanDuel for the price, is my favorite option. Other guys, I don't mind Ian Kinsler, even though they're facing a righty tonight. Noesi just isn't that good. He's leading off for the Tigers this evening, so I think Kinsler's in a good spot. And if I'm picking a high-dollar guy, it's probably going to be either Kinsler or Kipnis. And other than that, there's just not a lot that grabs me at the top. So you can definitely go down and get a guy kind of in the mid-tier. Maybe a guy like an Aaron Hill or somebody that's multi-position eligible. Certainly, if you're playing on DraftKings, there's a lot of guys that fit that bill. And it might be a good idea to take a multi-position guy and plug him in at second base, which is a thin position tonight. And then for value, got to go with another guy playing in Coors Field. Don't mind Tommy La Stella, who has, I believe, hits in 6 straight games, including 4 multi-hit games. So those are kind of the guys I'm looking at second base tonight.
Yeah, all day today I've been debating on Kipnis and Ian Kinsler. I just cannot decide, and I'm probably going to decide with like 2 or 3 minutes to go which one I want to roll with today because I can fit them both in, and it's been driving me crazy all day. I have Neil Walker in some of my tournament lineups tonight. I know not the best hitter's park, but Edwin Jackson has been really bad this season against lefties. Yeah. And I think Walker's in a decent spot. But I'm with you on La Stella. The lineups that I do have Freeman, I do have a little bit of exposure to Stella, and I think he's in a good spot. And Gordon Beckham is my BVP play of the day. I think he's in a good spot. He has good BVP. Going to be pretty low owned, I think. And batting second, and the wind's blowing out at that game, so I think he's in a good spot also.
Yeah, U.S. Cellular Field has really become a nice hitter's park. I wouldn't be surprised to see quite a few runs scored in that game. And, to be honest, I could see that game going either way with Rick Porcello, who's been very good so far this year. But prone to the occasional disaster start every now and again. So the White Sox bats could be pretty sneaky. With Abreu back, they certainly have a lot more firepower in there with Beckham in the 2-hole and Abreu and guys like Alexi Ramirez and Viciedo. They can get hot and put up a bunch of runs every now and again. And they do have some decent stats overall against Porcello. So that probably covers it at second base. I like those picks. Neil Walker, a good sneaky play against Edwin Jackson, who, he's just been terrible. That was just a bizarre signing by the Cubs in a rebuilding mode, and they went back a couple years ago and signed Edwin Jackson to a long-term deal. I don't know, that was bizarre, but that's neither here nor there. That pretty much takes care of second base. Let's move on to third, where I think we have a few more options tonight, but I'll let you take the trigger first on this one. Who you got at third base?
Third base, I think it's tough to fade Adrian Beltre right now. He's absolutely locked in. Gets a lefty, and he's absolutely smashed left-handed pitching to the tune of I think it's like 378 over the last season or two. Or no, it's 378 career is what I read this morning. He has a 378 WOBA in his career against left-handed pitching, and he's absolutely locked in right now. He's 11 for his last 23 with 3 home runs. And just my top play in general today at third base, if you're not going to like go anything with price, his 51 price tag is pretty high. I like Todd Frazier for tournament play tonight. I'm kind of high on the Reds right-handed hitters. Brock Holt is another option for cash game for me today. He's just batting leadoff. They get to face Bud Norris, who got hit by a pitch last time out. He's not been that great this season anyway. I think he's given up at least 4 runs in 4 of his last 5 starts. So I think he's in a good spot. And then the one cheap guy I'm looking at for today, I'm going back to that Chicago White Sox game. I'm going at Connor Gillespie. I think he's in a good spot. I think he's batting fourth or fifth in the lineup. He's been an on-base machine. He's batting like 340 this season. I think he's a great option for cash games tonight.
Yeah, I totally agree on Connor Gillespie. I think he's a sneaky under-the-radar guy tonight. I'll talk about Brock Holt for a minute, obviously, since I'm on with you and you get a chance probably to watch the Red Sox more than most. I tell you what, I mean, I watched that game last night, and it doesn't matter what that kid does. Any ground ball he hits, everything finds a hole. It's amazing. And I'm not going to, I mean, some people are saying he's got some element of luck with the balls he's been putting in play, finding holes, and obviously he's not going to hit 380 or 385 or whatever he's hitting right now, but he's a good little ball player there for the Red Sox. I think they found a little gem there, and he's very good in the outfield. Made a great catch at the wall last night. And what do you make of him long term? I mean, is he kind of like a 290 guy with 10 homers and 15 to 20 steals, or what would be a reasonable expectation for Brock Holt going forward?
I like that line that you just said, the 290, 10 home runs, maybe 15 to 20 stolen bases. And I get a thing every day from Red Sox Insider, and I was reading something, I think it was like 3 or 4 days ago, and the announcer was talking about it the other day too. Holt actually shows up to the ballpark the same time as Pedroia, and I don't know if you guys know the work routine of Dustin Pedroia, but he's one of the hardest workers in baseball, and I really like Brock Holt. I think he's got a spot in the Red Sox lineup as long as he continues to work hard and hustle the way that he does, and they like him so much that they're trying to find a spot for him in the lineup that they moved him out to the outfield last night. And he actually, like you said, made a great catch on Ian Kinsler last night. And I just love his hard work and his dedication. I think 290 is a reasonable number for what he can do moving forward.
Yeah, it's just kind of what hit me, kind of looking over his numbers in the minors, and then seeing a little bit of him since he's come up and got to see most of that game last night. So. Obviously I wouldn't expect a 375 to continue, but he's another one of those guys, if you want to slot him in on DraftKings at a thin second base position, to maybe fit him in there and then also get a guy like Adrian Beltre at third base. That's something that on DraftKings you have the flexibility to do so. So in the matchup tonight for the Red Sox against Norris, the left-handed bats certainly have the edge. So if you're looking at both of them are third base eligible on DraftKings, I would take Brock Holt over Xander Bogaerts tonight. I just think that's the better option if you're looking for a Red Sox bat against Norris.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I like Holt a little bit more than Bogaerts, and I think he actually has a little bit more upside than him tonight. Batting in that leadoff spot, he gets on base. You could likely see a steal out of him, and then put himself in the scoring position with Dustin Pedroia and Ortiz behind him. So I do like his, position tonight, especially batting leadoff.
Yeah, I think that covers most of the options. Actually, another guy, what about Lonnie Chisenhall? He has been raking, facing a right-hander tonight. I believe he's batting cleanup again for the Indians. Maybe if you want to go cheaper than those high-tier guys, I think he's 3,500, somewhere in that range. You think he's an option there in the mid-tier?
Yeah, I don't think he's going to be highly owned tonight either. I think tonight's a good night to jump on him for tournaments. He's burned a lot of people over the last month, and I think he's in a good spot. Like you said, getting to face Martinez. Martinez is not that great against lefties.
Yeah, I think Cleveland's a good, especially those left-handed bats. They have a ton of them. I think they're a good sneaky GPP stack tonight. If you want to go against the popular picks, they're probably going to be the Tigers against no AC, probably the Red Sox against Baltimore, and then obviously that game in Coors. So, I think a team like the Indians that would normally be highly owned in a good matchup will be a little bit less so tonight, similar to the Blue Jays that we mentioned a little bit ago. And transitioning into shortstop, I mean, I'm sure Jose Reyes is a guy that you like tonight if you're on those Blue Jays bats. Reasonable price tag for him on DraftKings, 4,800. He's about the fifth or sixth highest on the board, so he comes at a nice discount to a guy like Troy Tulowitzki. If I was on with CSU here, we'd be talking about Troy Tulowitzki the whole show. I believe this is the first time he's come up, and it's almost 6:15. So we can spend a few minutes talking about him. But how are you approaching Tulowitzki in another home game tonight, but at a high price tag, versus maybe other viable options like Hanley Ramirez, Jose Reyes, guys like that towards the top end?
I have Tulowitzki as my number one option, not considering price. But across the industry, I found that Jose Reyes is a lot cheaper. And I've actually rolled out Jose Reyes in a lot of my cash games tonight over Troy. Troy Tulowitzki is one of the best hitters in baseball, and if you can fit him into your lineup, go ahead and plug him in. I think tonight is a night where he's in a good spot. He's at home. He's batting 450 plus at home this season, and it's
ridiculous.
It's hard to fade him, but I think tonight Reyes is in a good spot against Nolasco, and I think he's going to be a little bit underowned. And I'm going to save the money and go Reyes over Troy Tulowitzki if you're considering price tonight.
Yeah, and those are obviously probably the two guys you want to look to if you're spending on shortstop. Let's go bargain shopping for a second. I already talked about that Red Sox game against the Tigers last night, but another young kid that was featured in that game and actually hit well over the weekend was Suarez, the young shortstop for the Tigers. He's bare minimum on DraftKings, 2,000. I don't know as much about him as I do about Brock Holt, but is he worth a punt at bare minimum? I mean, certainly couldn't be a whole lot of other options at 2K that are even starting tonight.
Yeah, I think he's the punt play of the day. I'm gonna agree with you. I didn't get to watch a lot of him. I got to see him a couple times this weekend. I did get to see him last night. But yeah, 2K. I think he batting eighth. Is that where he's batting?
I think he's batting ninth. He's down there. He's at the bottom, but
okay, yeah. It's a punt play, and he has ability to put up 5 to 10 points. And at 2K, if you can guarantee me 5 points, I'll put him in all my lineups right now.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, for 2K, that's kind of, you're getting a starter facing a bad pitcher. So go for it if you need the salary relief, if you want to spend elsewhere, if you want to load up on bats elsewhere, or get a guy like Strasburg. If you're going mid-tier, some options there. Didi Gregorius is starting again for the Diamondbacks. He's been raking since he got called up. He's 3,900. He's leading off tonight, so I think he's a solid option. And I think Elvis Andrus, whose price has come down a little bit, another nice matchup with that left-handed pitcher for Cleveland. He's also 3,900. So I think those are kind of the ways you can go tonight at short. Reyes and Tulo at the top, Suarez if you're punting, and then Andrus and Gregorius in the middle. Anybody else you're looking at short, or does that pretty much hit on most of them?
Well, I saw one of the guys that I saw people talking about it in chat, and I'm just going to go ahead and mention it. Ian Desmond on FanDuel at 2,200 is a plug-and-play for me tonight.
Wow, I didn't even notice that. So he's min-priced.
He's 2,200 on FanDuel today. I'm huge on Reyes, but there's just no way you can give me somebody like Ian Desmond at 2,200. And
he's been hot lately. He had 2 homers in Petco Park over the weekend.
Yeah, I just didn't understand it. I was like, I saw that this morning because I go down there and I look at it and I was like, is that a mistake? Is it an error? Is it supposed to be 3,200? And I plugged him in all my FanDuel lineups tonight. I don't even care if he's 100% owned.
Yeah, so I'm going to have to go put him into my Survivor teams on some of them. I'll probably keep Tulowitzki on a few, but yeah, that's interesting. That's a great nugget. So those of you playing cash games on FanDuel, min-priced Ian Desmond, in a not-so-horrible matchup with Vogelsong, I think that's definitely a steal at that price. So let's move on to outfield for the last 10 minutes or so here. Tons of options in the outfield tonight. I think you're going to see a lot of people, again, on those Braves outfielders, the Uptons. Jason Hayward. Hayward's price has risen quite a bit on DraftKings. I think you've got some sneaky outfield plays, though. I mentioned earlier in the show, Noesi can't get left-handed batters out. The Tigers have switched up their lineup a little bit tonight, even though Miguel Cabrera is in there. Don Kelly's batting second, who he always seems to hit somewhere different in the order. He's batting second tonight. And J.D. Martinez is in there batting fifth. I like both of those guys as kind of mid to low range plays across the industry. You won't find them too highly priced, so I like them. Don't mind Jose Bautista again if you want to pick on the Twins pitching staff tonight. Andrew McCutchen, I know if you're a believer in BVP, Andrew McCutchen 10 for 23 with a couple homers off of Edwin Jackson. I know Edwin Jackson has struggled more against left-handed batters this year. But I think McCutchen's a fine play in that game. And Alex Rios is another guy that popped out to me. His price has come down a little bit. He's 4,600 on DraftKings. And then from that same game, big fan of Michael Brantley tonight, who might be flying under the radar. His price has come down from about 5,200 to 4,600 on DraftKings. Brantley is one of my favorite plays tonight because I think he'll be underowned. Good matchup in a hitter's park. I think he sets up well for a nice night. So what are your thoughts on some of those guys? And then, obviously, I haven't touched on everybody, so who else do you like at outfield?
Yeah, I think Brantley's in a good spot. He's been hitting the ball really well this year. Alex Rios is one of my top options. He has a 5.08 WOBA against lefties this season, and he's 10 for his last 22. So he's got the hitting the ball well thing going for him, and he has the matchup thing going for him. I think I'm pretty high on him. I like Jose Bautista tonight. Like I said, I'm all over these Toronto bats, and Bautista's in a good spot. He has a 4.16 WOBA at home this season, and his WOBA against righties is 3.92. So he's in a good spot for me. Andrew McCutchen, of course, I'm a BVP guy. All over Andrew McCutchen tonight. He actually hits the ball better at home, even though it's a pitcher's park. And this is right around the time last year that he got things going, if I'm not mistaken. And I think he's in a great spot tonight. If you're looking for kind of some cheap options, and I do, just to mention it, for DraftKings, I do have Brandon Moss in my outfield. I love that he's outfield eligible on DraftKings. And at 4,900, I don't think you can go wrong with him in the outfield tonight. But I'm going to go back to the well for some more Scotty Vince-like tonight. His historic numbers against lefties are just too good for me to pass on at 2,800. He's at a hitter's park. Cingrani, I think, is one of the better options at pitcher today, but I still like some of the right-handed hitters for the Dodgers tonight. What's your thoughts on him tonight?
Yeah, I think that's a great play. I mean, another guy that on a night like tonight might fly under the radar and be a nice contrarian pick. You know, people in the chat are actually mentioning some other guys too. Melky Cabrera, I'm assuming if you're on the Blue Jays bats, you kind of like him. And then, what about Josh Hamilton? He's super pricey on DraftKings. I don't have any shares of Josh Hamilton tonight against a competent pitcher in Chavez. I think there's too many other options out there, safer options. Maybe for tournaments you can give Hamilton a look, but not a guy that I'm on tonight. I'm trying to keep up with the chat. But Melky Cabrera was a guy that a lot of people were asking about, and then also the Rockies outfielders.
Yeah, I'm high on the Rockies outfielders. I think Blackmon and Dickerson are both in great spots. But to your Josh Hamilton thing, I think he's a little too pricey tonight against Chavez. I'd rather pay the extra $100 and get Jose Bautista in there, or save $100 and get Justin Upton in my lineup. But I'm Josh Hamilton, if you want to play him in a tournament to be contrarian, I think he's a great play. Melky Cabrera is probably flying under the radar, as well as a lot of the Toronto bats, like we've mentioned. But yeah, Blackmon and Dickerson, who's ever cheaper across the industry, I like both of those guys. And Springer, you were talking about Houston. I like Springer tonight. Cole Mentor has been pitching a little bit better, but he still has those reverse split home run where he gives up a lot more home runs to righties than he does lefties. And I think Springer's in a good spot tonight also.
Yeah, I like Springer as well. Definitely a guy that his price has come back up. But he's just been consistently hitting. Ever since his maybe 3 weeks in. He's found his comfort zone, and they're playing in a good hitter's park in Arizona tonight. So I agree on him. People ask about Michael Bourne. I like Michael Bourne on some sites, but he's a bit pricey on DraftKings. Let's
I like
see.
David Murphy a little bit more than I like Michael Bourne. I think Murphy has a little bit more upside and he's a lot cheaper than Bourne.
Yeah, he's like 1,000 cheaper, 1,100 cheaper on DraftKings, I think. Even though he's hitting a little bit farther down in the order, might be a good play there. What are your thoughts on, this is not an outfield question, but a guy that I've kind of sworn off of because he's been so bad, and it seems like every time I take him, he goes 0 for 4 with 3 Ks. Any merit to Chris Johnson tonight at Coors Field? He's another guy who's min salary on FanDuel, although that's certainly not a mistake because he's been terrible. He's 3,600 on DraftKings. Is he still a stay away for you despite the matchup, or are you on him at all tonight?
I have a little bit of shares on him where I'm trying to save. I like him on sites like Draft Street where they take away for strikeouts because the guy doesn't really strike out that often. And the matchup is there. Like we said, the guy is a double-A pitcher that's just getting called up to replace the injured player. Um, Chris Johnson on FanDuel, I do like him at 2,200. You get a share of a guy starting batting in the top part of the order at Coors Field for 2,200. I think he's in a good spot there. But I'm not too high on him on DraftKings tonight. I think there's just so many options that are around him that I would rather like pay up or save the money for on DraftKings tonight.
Yeah, I would agree. I think he's more of a FanDuel type option. Yeah, I kind of like Jay Bruce as well. I think he's in a good spot. He's kind of more of a DraftKings specific play. His price hasn't come back up, and he's seeing the ball a little bit better right now. Looks like he's finally getting close to 100% health after that stint on the DL. So he's another mid-range play that I don't mind tonight. Trying to
Going
scroll through the list.
going
Go
to
ahead.
that same game in Cincy, and I've already mentioned a few times how I like the Cincy righties. I think Ryan Ludwig is a good tournament play tonight at 2,900, batting fifth for the Reds.
Yeah, I think that could be interesting. I could see that going a number of different ways, that Dodgers-Reds game, because that lineup for the Reds does look a little bit watered down tonight without Mesoraco in there. I could see Heron getting totally shelled, or I could see Heron pitching a random good game. So I think, especially for tournaments, I think I would agree with you that those Reds bats are nice plays. Some questions in the chat. Somebody asked Brock Holt or Connor Gillespie.
I'm going to go Holt, but not by a lot. That's actually really tough for me. I'm high on both those guys tonight. If I had to give a little edge, it's going to be to Holt. If I'm looking for a cash game that's a little bit safer, I'd probably go Connor. Just, he's a little bit safer. Like I said, he's batting like 340 this year with a 400 WOBA against righties. But, yeah, I'm going to give a slight edge to Holt in tournaments, and I'm going to take Gillespie in my cash games on that one.
A couple lineup updates. The Pirates have scratched Neil Walker tonight. So Josh Harrison is leading off and playing second base. Travis Snyder is now in the two-hole, which I think makes Snyder a viable value play against Edwin Jackson. So just a word of note, some people were on Neil Walker tonight. I know we mentioned him earlier in the show. So if you're on him, get him out of your lineups as he has been scratched. I don't see a reason yet. But all the other late-game lineups are out. The Giants, the notable omission there, Angel Pagan is not in their starting lineup today, but you're probably not on a whole lot of bats from the Giants against Steven Strasburg. The A's lineup is out. No real surprises there. Jaso is DHing and batting second, and then the Angels lineup is out as well. So all the late lineups have come out during the show, but just the big news there is no Neil Walker. So,
Yeah, I got some work to do now.
let's see. Somebody asked Kipnis or Kinsler. That's a close one. I really like Kipnis tonight. I know you're still struggling with that decision. I'm going to give Kipnis the edge, just from my perspective there.
Yeah, I still can't make a decision on that. I won't be able to make a decision on that, and like I said, until probably 5 minutes to go. I have two lineups made, and they're both pretty close, and it's just I can't decide on what second baseman I like more.
Let's see. Oswaldo Arcia. A lot of people asking about him against Dickey. If you just had to choose one of these, I'll group these questions. 4 guys. Arcia, Melky Cabrera, Matt Kemp, and J.D. Martinez. I'd assume you're going to rank Melky Cabrera first. Maybe let's pick two of those guys then. Outside of Melky Cabrera, who's clearly probably the best one out of those four. Arcia, Kemp, or JD Martinez?
That's a good one, but I'm gonna go Kemp, batting in the 4 spot against the lefty at a hitter's ballpark.
Yeah, I would kind of agree there. I'd leave Arcia and JD Martinez out. Somebody mentioning Ellsbury's not in the lineup for the Royals. Keep in mind the weather also is not good there, so keep that in mind too if you are rostering anybody from the Yankees and Royals game.
Yeah, if you guys go to the forums, I just got done sticking in it right before we jumped on the show. Our Roto Grinders weather guy, he posted, so if you guys want to read what he posted about the game, he's saying that there's maybe a little chance of it getting in, but he's not liking it. He gave it an orange, which is between yellow and red, so I'm gonna kind of fade that game, me personally.
Yeah, I don't have any exposure to it right now. Frankly, I don't think you're missing out on a ton by not having exposure to that game because it's a tough park to hit home runs in. Both the offenses are struggling, and the highest guy I would have been on in that game would be Vargas. And Vargas isn't exactly a wow factor pitcher anyway because he doesn't strike a whole lot of guys out. So really, I mean, I don't know how much exposure I would have even had to that game before the weather concern, and now that just was easy enough to totally fade it. So I don't have to. Now people are saying that it's been postponed. I don't know if that's legit or not. I haven't seen that yet, but a couple more questions. What about Van Slyke versus David Murphy? Do you like Van Slyke better?
Yeah, I'm gonna play the Hitters Park one more time, and I know they're playing in Arlington, and it's the Hitters Park also, but I'm gonna go historic. I'm gonna take Van Slyke one more time.
Fair enough. How about a cheap catcher on DraftKings? I mean, if you somebody's trying to get Brandon Moss instead of Evan Gattis, and they have to go cheap at catcher, so that would probably be like 2,800 or less. I mean, there's a bunch of guys down there tonight that are starting. I mean, I've got one punt team that has Chris Stewart on it against Edwin Jackson, but I don't really love a whole lot, kind of below Jaso, maybe Alex Avila, but I can't go super cheap with a whole lot of my catcher spots tonight.
Yeah, the only catcher that I would maybe look at is, like I said earlier, Josh Stoll, maybe, for Toronto, just because Nolasco's so bad, and it's a righty-lefty matchup, but he's batting eighth. I'm with you. I'm not really looking to punt my catcher position tonight. I think you can punt other positions and be okay.
Yeah, several people have confirmed the report of the Yankees-Royals game being postponed. So I'm going to have some faith in the Grinders chat right now and assume that 50 people aren't together trolling us here on the show. So don't take anybody from the Royals-Yankees game. That's about it. So I think we've gotten through most of the questions in the chat, gotten through all the positions tonight. I know both of us have some lineups to go at it. So Stevie, thank you so much for filling in for CSU here tonight, and it was nice doing a show with you.
Yeah, man, I had fun, and thank you for everything you do for Roto Grinders.
Yeah, and you as well. Stevie does a lot of work keeping this site clean and keeping us moving, so appreciate all that you do as well. So, and thank you guys all for joining us tonight. Apologies for getting started a little bit late, but we were missing a co-host and we were having problems with Skype, so we got to do the old school Google version tonight. But hopefully the analysis was still good enough to win you guys some money tonight, and hopefully us as well. So for Stevie, this is STL Cards, and we will see you tomorrow, everybody.